Run your finger along the bottom of your jaw right now. Feel that small, bony point jutting forward, just beneath your lips. That's your chin. You've had one your entire life. You've probably never once thought about why. Here's the strange part. No other animal on Earth has one. Not a single other species. Not a chimpanzee, not a gorilla, not a gibbon or an orangutan. Look at any of your closest living relatives, and their lower jaw slopes backward, smooth and receding, with nothing jutting forward at all. And it isn't just living apes. Neanderthals didn't have chins. Denisovans didn't either. Every extinct human relative that ever existed, going back millions of years, had a flat or receding lower jaw. Yours is the only lineage that ever produced this shape. This isn't a small cosmetic detail either. Anthropologists rely on the chin as one of the clearest markers for identifying a Homo sapiens skull. Find a fossil jaw with a clear chin, and you can be reasonably confident you're holding a member of our own species, not an older or more distant relative. That's how consistent and how uniquely ours this feature really is. Which means the bone under your lip right now is one of the strangest, most exclusive features anywhere in the animal kingdom. And for decades, scientists had no good explanation for why it exists at all. So let's dig into what they tried first, because the story of getting this wrong is almost as interesting as finally getting it right. The first idea seems obvious. Maybe the chin helps you chew. Your jaw takes on enormous mechanical stress every time you bite down. A thicker, stronger structure at the front of that jaw seems like exactly the kind of reinforcement natural selection might favor, the same way a bridge gets a support beam exactly where the load is heaviest. A researcher named Flora Groening, a biological anthropologist at the University of York, tested this directly. She built detailed models of modern human and Neanderthal jaws and simulated how each one handled the mechanical stress of biting and chewing. Her results suggested the chin genuinely does help the jaw resist certain loads. It looked for a while like a real answer. Here's the twist that undercuts it. If the chin exists purely to reinforce chewing, men and women should have essentially identical chins because both sexes chew food the same basic way. They don't. Researchers Zanetta Thayer, at the time a graduate student at Northwestern University, and Seth Dobson, a biological anthropologist at Dartmouth, measured chin shape across nearly 200 skulls from populations around the world. They found a small but real, consistent difference. Men tend to have taller, more pronounced chins than women. If chewing alone explained the chin, that gap shouldn't exist. So Thayer and Dobson proposed something else entirely: sexual selection. The idea that certain traits spread through a population not because they help you survive, but because they help you attract a mate. Under this theory, a strong jawline became a visual signal, maybe an unconscious marker of underlying hormone levels or general mate quality, the same way antlers or bright plumage work in other species. For years, these two explanations, chewing support and mate attraction, sat in competition, each with real evidence behind it, neither one fully satisfying. Then, in 2026, a new study reframed the entire question, and the answer turned out to be far stranger than either camp expected. Noreen von Kramen-Taubadel, a professor and chair of the Department of Anthropology at the University at Buffalo, led a team examining 532 skulls held in museum collections across Europe and the United States. Some were human. Others belonged to chimpanzees, gorillas, gibbons, bonobos, and orangutans. On every single skull, the researchers measured 32 precise landmarks and 46 distances between them, mapping the entire lower jaw and cranium in careful detail. Then they built an evolutionary family tree from that data and ran genetic simulations to model how these traits could have shifted over millions of years of ape evolution. Here's what made their approach different from almost everything that came before it. Most earlier, chin research started from an assumption that the chin must exist because natural selection specifically favored it, for chewing, for speech, for something. Von Kramen-Taubadel's team refused to start there. Instead, they tested what's called the null hypothesis of neutrality. In plain terms, they asked a harder, more honest question first. Could the chin's shape have emerged randomly, as a side effect of other changes, with no direct selection pressure acting on the chin itself at all? The answer, when it came back, surprised even the researchers who ran the analysis. Von Kreiman-Taubadel found real evidence of direct selection acting on other parts of the human skull. But the chin itself didn't fit that pattern. The traits specific to the chin lined up far more closely with something evolutionary biologists call a spandrel. Here's what that word actually means, because it's doing a lot of work in this story. A spandrel is a feature that shows up not because evolution selected for it directly, but as an unplanned side effect of other changes happening nearby. The term comes from architecture. Picture the underside of a grand dome, like the one crowning the Basilica of San Marco. Where curved arches meet to support that dome, they naturally create small triangular spaces in between them. Nobody designed those triangular spaces on purpose. They exist purely because the arches had to be built a certain way, and the leftover shape was the unavoidable byproduct. Von Kreiman-Taubadel's argument is that your chin works exactly the same way. So let's reconstruct what actually happened, bone by bone, over an enormous stretch of time. Picture an early hominin skull, long before anything resembling a modern human face existed. A heavy jaw, large teeth built for tough, fibrous food, a face built to support serious chewing power. Now let the brain begin expanding. Slowly, generation after generation, natural selection favors bigger brain cases because more brain tissue means better problem solving, better tool use, better social coordination. As the brain case grows, the entire architecture of the skull has to shift to accommodate it. The angle of the whole head changes. At the same time, something else is happening lower down. As early humans start relying more on tools and eventually on cooking, the intense selective pressure for massive teeth and a heavy chewing jaw starts to ease off. Teeth shrink. The lower face, which used to project forward to support all that chewing muscle and tooth mass, starts retreating instead, tucking in beneath the enlarging brain case above it. Two separate trends, a bigger brain reshaping the skull from above and a shrinking jaw retreating from below, are both happening at once, for reasons that have nothing to do with your chin specifically. Cooking mattered enormously here too. Once early humans were regularly softening food with fire, the sheer mechanical demand on the jaw dropped. You no longer needed the same massive muscles and reinforced bone that a diet of tough, raw, fibrous plants once required. That eased the pressure on jaw size even further, adding one more reason for the lower face to shrink back, independent of anything to do with chins at all. And here's where the chin finally appears. As the lower jaw shrinks and the face tucks inward, a small amount of bone at the very front of the jaw doesn't retreat along with everything else. It's left behind, jutting slightly forward, simply because of the geometry created by everything shifting around it. Nobody selected for that specific leftover shape. It's the triangular space under the dome. It's bone filling the gap left behind by a shrinking face making room for an expanding brain. That's your chin. Not a chewing reinforcement. Not a mating signal glowing with hidden meaning. A structural leftover, a side effect of two much bigger evolutionary stories running in parallel. Here's the twist that makes this genuinely uncomfortable for a certain kind of thinking. Scientists, like most people, tend to assume that if a trait is distinctive enough, especially one completely unique to our own species, it must have been put there for a reason. It must be doing something important. That instinct has a name in evolutionary biology, an adaptationist bias. The reflexive belief that every trait exists because it was useful. Von Kreiman-Taubadel's research is a direct challenge to that instinct. Being uniquely human doesn't automatically mean a feature was built by natural selection for a purpose. Sometimes a trait is unique simply because the surrounding architecture shifted in a way that happened to leave it behind, with no function required at all. So the next time you catch your reflection and notice your chin, or someone else's, sitting there below the lips exactly the way it always has, you're not looking at nature's carefully engineered jaw reinforcement, and you're not looking at some ancient advertisement for good genes either. You're looking at leftover space, a quiet architectural accident millions of years old that happened to end up on your face and stayed there simply because there was never any pressure telling your body to smooth it away. Run your finger along your jaw one more time. That small bony point isn't a feature evolution built for you. It's a feature evolution never quite bothered to erase.